Welcome to the WRAL Daily Download. I'm Grace Holland. North Carolina soybean farmers are caught in the middle of the U.S.'s trade war with China. It's an industry worth more than $600 million in our state, and China is one of our farmers' top buyers. But now they're boycotting the crop in retaliation for tariffs on Chinese goods. WRAL's Heidi Kirk talked to one of the many farmers worried about whether they can come back from this. Heidi, thanks for being here.
Absolutely.
So let's start with this soybean farmer that you met. Who is this person and how did you meet them?
Absolutely. So her name is Lorinda Overman. And if you search up Wayne County soybean farmers, she is going to be one of the people that pop up right at the top. So that's kind of how we got in contact with her. Of course, we wanted to connect with someone that's well versed in this, that's been farming soybeans for a long time, and she was kind of top of the list. So her husband's family has been farming soybeans for generations right in the heart of Wayne County, technically over the county line, or technically over the city line of Goldsboro, kind of out in a rural community there. But they farm things like corn, sweet potatoes, and then, of course, soybeans. And so that's kind of how we got in contact with her, learned a little bit about her, went out to the farm, and really got a tour of what a soybean field looks like. It's actually a first time for me, so I got a chance to, walk down the different rows, see what the plant looks like, and then, of course, look actually at the soybeans. Something that I thought was interesting is that the first thing that Lorinda said to us is it's been a tough season, not only because of this tariff issue and the trade war, but also because it's been a really dry season. So when she took out her hand, she showed us the soybeans, and she said they're a little bit smaller than normal because of that. But something that I thought was interesting is it's actually her husband's family, as I mentioned, and she said, I am not from a farming background. She married her husband and just said that she really got integrated into this community and said that it's really still, in a way, even though she's been doing it so long now, it's still so fresh and new and exciting to her. And so even though she doesn't have that generational pull, she's really become an outspoken advocate for these issues and was really a lovely person to have a conversation with.
Right. And why is it that soybeans are such a big crop in eastern North Carolina? I remember when I worked out there, sometimes you just pass miles of fields of soybeans in some areas.
Well, it's really funny because, I have lived and worked out in eastern North Carolina for a while now, and I have seen fields and fields of those soybeans that you mentioned, but I just had never known exactly what they are. Being in North Carolina, soybeans are a new crop for me. And so even though I am from a rural area in Arkansas, it's just not as big there as it is here. So now I know what to look for. And so you're right. I've noticed so many fields of them all across eastern North Carolina. And here is why. And it's really interesting. So as you probably know, North Carolina is known for growing tobacco crops back in the day. But of course, there's not as big of a market for those anymore. And so a lot of soybean farmers actually came from that background. They were farming tobacco, and then they decided they needed to make a switch. And so they went to soybeans. And something that I learned from Lorinda today is this is kind of one of the easier crops to farm, that she said, they can withstand droughts or excessive amounts of rain. Overall, you can come out kind of on the other side of that, which is really good. And so, just like many farmers in eastern North Carolina, that's how the Overman's family got involved in this, is being former tobacco farmers and then switching over to soybeans.
It's really interesting just the way that that can evolve as the economy sort of changes and has changed here in North Carolina. So, like I mentioned, I worked in Eastern Carolina too. I remember those soybean farms. I was actually working in that area during the first Trump term, and there were tariffs then that were affecting soybean farmers. And I remember going out and talking to some farmers in different counties about how it was affecting them at the time. How did this end up playing out during and after Trump's term, first term?
Well, it's a great question because his response is really what we're looking at now, because there's a lot of farmers out there that are very concerned, frankly, for their livelihood, and they want to know, how are we going to get to the end of this? And so I'm going to refer to my notes here. President Trump gave American farmers more than $22 billion in aid payments because, during that same time, they were going through similarly what we're going through now, and they just needed help from the federal government whenever it comes to those tariffs that raised, all sorts of costs of farm equipment and labor and even seeds and fertilizer, all those types of things. It really devastated them. So he gave out all of those aid aid payments, and it really helped them out. It made sure that they got to the end of this. So, whenever we're looking at this time, that's something that farmers are really clinging to. President Trump helped us out during this time, during those tariffs, during the trade war, and now we need that type of help again. And someone that I wanted to get some context from on this is our agriculture commissioner, Steve Troxler. So I reached out to him and basically asked kind of his take on this, especially given the history here. And I have a quote that I want to read from him from a very lengthy statement that he sent us. But he said, the last time we went through this with trade negotiations, Trump was very good at looking after farmers, and we certainly hope that this happens this time too. So he's pointing to those, billions of dollars that Trump sent directly to farmers to make sure that they could stay on their feet. So I think whenever you bring that up, there's a deep history here, and I think that those farmers are just really looking ahead, hoping that the president comes through and can help them out in a big way again.
All right, let's take a quick break right there, and we'll be right back. Heidi, before the break, we were kind of talking about the history of, how soybeans became a crop here in North Carolina that are so important, and then also the history of tariffs, and that this is sort of deja vu for these soybean farmers here. What is President Trump's plan this time around to help those farmers?
Absolutely. So similarly to last time, he has spoken out and said, I'm going to put an aid package together. He understands the nature of this. He knows that soybean farmers are hurting. And, in the past, as we just mentioned, he's been a friend of farmers and he really wants to help them out. I mean, it's worth noting that, he garnered a big constituency in some of these rural communities. And so he really sees himself as a president that wants to help those people out. So he's been very vocal about this, saying we're going to be working on an aid package specifically for U.S. soybean farmers during this boycott. Again, the whole thing ties back to those tariffs that are brought on specifically because of this trade war, and he wants to help out. But he also says that he's still working with China on a deal here, and North Carolina farmers are still hopeful of that too, because again, that's one of their largest international buyers. But they're also very cognizant of the fact that it is peak soybean season. There's going to only be a few more weeks left, and then they're going to be shipping out those soybeans, and they really need China to buy them. I even tried to get some numbers from Lorinda today on how many of their soybeans go out to China. She couldn't give me an exact number, but she says it's a massive amount of soybeans. We need them to buy them. And, I asked her point blank, what will this do to your business if you can't sell your soybeans to China? And she said, I just have no idea. I can't even envision a world in which that wouldn't happen. And so, they're very cognizant of the timeline. They would appreciate some aid, but at the end of the day, it's definitely causing some fatigue in their minds.
And what about local legislators, state legislators, representatives in Congress like Don Davis, who I know gave a press conference on this? What are they saying about what the response should be to this?
So we had a chance to talk to Don Davis about this on Tuesday, and I asked him directly, what is your message to your constituents, who are farmers in Eastern North Carolina and are directly feeling the impacts of this? And he says, as your legislator, I want to be an outspoken advocate. And he says that he has been. He said that he's been in contact with people up on the Hill, writing about this, talking about this, making sure they know about people's stories in Eastern North Carolina. And he actually told me he's visited some of these farmers directly, not just soybean farmers, tobacco farmers, other types of farmers, because really they're all dealing with the impacts of these tariffs. They're dealing with those rising costs and trying to get themselves back up on their feet regardless of whether they're farming soybeans or something else. And so he says he's just going to continue to push for that aid. He also is somewhat hopeful that the president will come through, just given his track record. But, lots of these local legislators are very familiar with the issues, especially in Eastern North Carolina, because, again, we are a huge agricultural community. So it's something that is definitely being talked about by our legislators. They are well aware of the issue. And I think, people, especially in the eastern part of our state, they're going to continue pushing big time for this.
Right. And how are the farmers that you talk to doing with all of this in mind? With that pressure, that deadline pressure to get their crops out, do they think this is all going to come together in time?
They're really upset. It's a really good question because I was just feeling the fatigue in, the Overman's voice, talking to Lorinda and really hearing how much she cares about this industry. And she really hit home. It's like at the end of the day, people in the farming industry are so necessary. We all know a farmer. We all are benefiting from the farming industry. And she really just said, I don't know what's going to happen to us. She is ultimately worried that they are not going to be able to pay their bills at the end of the day. And that's something that really sticks with me. It's worth noting that a lot of farmers, take out loans ahead of their season to make sure that they can pay for all the initial costs, and then they pay that back. But this year, the Overman said, we don't know if we're going to be able to pay back that loan. And that is really, really overwhelming for them. Just having that conversation with her really hurt my heart because you can tell that they're really just stressed about it. She said multiple times it's something that keeps us up at night. We're, plugged into the news more than we ever have been. There was an analogy that she used. She said, especially during periods of droughts, we probably check the weather more than, your weather people at WRAL. She literally said that, but she was like, right now we're more prone to pay attention to the news because we need to know what's going on with the trade war. So there's a whole lot of fatigue. There's a lot of stress. They're really upset. There is hope. The farmers that we talked to, they originally supported Trump, and so they're looking to him to really come through and help out in the way that he's said that he will. And so I think we're all going to be kind of watching and waiting in the wings to really see how this all plays out.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Heidi. We appreciate your reporting on this very important topic. And thank you for listening to the WRAL Daily Download and for making us part of your morning routine. Another great way to get WRAL news is the Morning Briefing newsletter. That's a daily email with Triangle news, events, and headlines to help you get ready for the day. You can sign up at WRAL.com/newsletter.